story begins with a university student returning to his rural hometown. He had left his life in the city to care for his grandmother, who had collapsed. Fortunately, her condition stabilized, but the student was left with a week of free time in a remote area with absolutely nothing to do.
This context is crucial because it explains the motivation behind the tragedy.
In rural Japan, when money is tight and the few local entertainment spots like karaoke and bowling are exhausted, young people often turn to kimodameshi, or tests of courage. Idleness is the devil's workshop, and in this case, it led the narrator and his two local friends, John and Josh, to make a fatal decision. They decided to explore a bankrupt hospital surrounded by desolate rice fields. The location itself was a textbook example of a haunted site. It was a 3-story concrete structure that had been grand in its time, but was now rotting in total darkness. Rumors swirled about mummified corpses hidden in the basement, and the ghosts of nurses patrolling the halls. Before they even entered, the group was given a warning.
John mentioned a friend who had previously visited the site and flicked a cigarette butt onto the floor.
That friend reportedly went insane, muttering about needing to return to the town before his life fell apart. In horror folklore, this is the threshold warning. It is the moment where the characters are given a chance to turn back. However, driven by peer pressure and the fear of looking like a coward, the narrator ignored his instincts. They entered through a smashed window on the first floor. The exploration began with an immediate sense of dread. The sound of crunching glass under their feet echoed through the silent building. The lobby was a chaotic mess of overturned desks and rotting patient files. As they moved deeper, the narrator felt a violent chill and a strong desire to flee, but he was trapped because John held the car keys. The group ascended to the upper floors, but the true horror lay beneath them. While climbing the stairs, the narrator glanced back and saw a pair of pale feet standing at the entrance to the basement. He froze in terror, but when his friends looked, the apparition was gone. This isolation is a key component of psychological horror. The entity targets the most vulnerable member first, sowing doubt and fear before the physical attack begins. Despite the narrator's desperate pleas to leave, John and Josh insisted on visiting the basement. They wanted to find the rumored corpse. As they descended, the atmosphere shifted. Unlike the chaotic upper floors, the basement was strangely clean and organized. It felt as if the hospital was still functioning. At the end of the hallway, a surgical light box was illuminated, reading, "In surgery." This was impossible for an abandoned building with no power. Drawn like moths to a flame, the two friends moved toward the operating room. Then, chaos erupted. Josh tripped and fell. It seemed like a clumsy accident until John shone his flashlight on Josh's leg. The skin and muscle on his shin were completely gone. The bone was exposed white in the beam of the light. It was not a scrape from a fall. Something had taken a massive bite out of him. The source of the violence revealed itself moments later. Inside the operating room, the beam of the flashlight caught a face. It was not a ghost in the traditional sense, but a morbidly obese, jiggling mass of flesh. It was human-shaped, but impossibly wide, swaying side to side as it began to move toward them. The group panicked. As they tried to drag the injured Josh to safety, an empty wheelchair launched itself down the hallway, slamming into them with supernatural force. The group fractured.
John, the senior, snapped mentally and ran screaming into the darkness, abandoning his friends.
The narrator, terrified and seeing the face of a ghostly child between his legs, made the selfish choice to survive. He ran. He scrambled up the stairs and escaped through a window just as their fourth friend, Ben, arrived on a motorcycle outside. The horror followed them even after they escaped.
Safe at a convenience store, the narrator tried to call the police.
When the line connected, there was no dispatcher.
Instead, he heard John's voice screaming in agony through the receiver of the emergency line. Simultaneously, Ben received a phone call from Josh, who was still bleeding out in the hospital basement.
The call was nonsensical.
Josh spoke calmly, claiming a doctor was there and performing surgery.
He repeated the phrase, "He is here," over and over again, until the line went dead. The aftermath serves as a grim validation of the supernatural events.
Josh was found dead near the basement stairs. The cause of death listed as shock from blood loss.
John was never found and remains a missing person to this day.
The police suspected the narrator of covering up a murder, but one piece of evidence puzzled the detectives.
The wound on Josh's leg was baffling. As the narrator left the interrogation room, he heard the detective mutter a final, chilling observation.
The bite mark on the victim's leg did not match the dental structure of a human being.